came home, exhausted, and my wife's friends called me antisocial for not wanting to hang out. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I'd like to ask for a quick favor. We've noticed the channel's been losing a bit of traction, and your subscription can make all the difference. It's quick, free, and really helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world to us. Let's grow this channel together. Thank you so much. Now, let's get into the video. Married someone different and wanted to leave. I work construction, and yesterday I had one of those days where everything goes wrong, and you're out there in 95-degree heat for 12 hours straight because the concrete pour got delayed, and then we had to stay late to finish the foundation work, and by the time I got home I was covered in dust and sweat and my back was killing me, and all I wanted was a shower and maybe to sit down for 5 minutes and not think about anything. But when I walked through the door, my wife Adriana had 3 of her friends over, and they were all sitting in the living room with wine glasses and music playing, and they all looked at me like I was some kind of intruder in my own house, and I could tell they'd been talking about something because they got all quiet when I came in. Adriana goes, "Oh hey babe, you remember Fiona and Gina and Jane?" And I nodded and said hey, but I was honestly too tired to do much more than that, and I just wanted to get upstairs and shower off all this concrete dust that was making me itch everywhere and maybe grab something to eat. But then Fiona, who I've never really liked because she's always got this attitude like she's better than everyone, she goes, "Wow, not even going to join us for a drink. That's pretty antisocial," and she's looking at me with this smirk that I know means she's trying to start something. And I'm standing there thinking, I've been working since 6 a.m. I'm exhausted, I'm dirty, I just want to clean up. But I can see Adriana looking at me with this expression like she's embarrassed or something. And I'm starting to feel this anger building up because why should I have to perform for these people when I just worked my ass off all day to pay for this house they're sitting in drinking wine that I paid for? So I said, yeah, I'm gonna pass tonight. I'm pretty beat, and I started heading toward the stairs, but then Gina pipes up with, "That's so rude. We hardly ever see you." And Jane nods and goes, "Adriana was just telling us how you never want to socialize anymore," and I can feel my face getting hot because what the hell is Adriana telling these people about me? I turned around and I probably should have just kept walking, but I was tired and annoyed, and I said, "Look, I work 60 hours a week. I'm covered in concrete dust. I haven't eaten since lunch. Maybe cut me some slack here." And Fiona laughs this fake laugh and goes, "There's always an excuse with you, isn't there?" That's when I really started getting pissed because who the hell is she to judge me? And I said, "Excuse me? I don't think working to support my family is an excuse." And Adriana jumps in with this voice like she's talking to a child and goes, "Okay, everyone, let's just calm down," but she's looking at me like I'm the problem here. And Fiona, she just won't let it go. She goes, "You know what? This is exactly what we were talking about before you got home. You're always so defensive and angry." And I'm thinking, what the hell were they talking about before I got home, and why is my wife discussing our business with these people? I looked at Adriana and I said, "What exactly were you talking about?" And she got this look on her face like a deer in headlights and goes, "Nothing. We were just chatting," but I could tell she was lying, and all her friends are sitting there watching this like it's some kind of show. So I said, "Fine, I'm going upstairs," and I left them there and went to take a shower, and I figured that would be the end of it, but I could hear them talking and laughing downstairs. And it was really bothering me because I had this feeling they were talking about me and making jokes about me while I'm upstairs. Trying to wash off a day's worth of hard work. After my shower, I was still hungry, so I went to the kitchen to make a sandwich, and I had to walk past the living room, and they all got quiet again when they saw me, and Fiona said something under her breath that made the other 2 laugh, and I just ignored it and went to the kitchen. But then I could hear them talking again, and I heard Adriana's voice say something about always in a bad mood and never wants to do anything fun, and I'm standing there making a sandwich thinking, is this really what my wife thinks of me, and is this what she tells her friends? So I took my sandwich and went upstairs to our bedroom and turned on Netflix and figured I'd just stay out of their way. But the walls in our house are thin, and I could hear everything they were saying, and that's when things got really bad. I heard Fiona say, "I don't know how you put up with it," and Gina goes, "He's always so moody and hostile," and Jane chimes in with, "That's not normal behavior for a husband." And I'm sitting there eating my sandwich thinking, these people don't know anything about me or my marriage, but they're sitting in my living room judging me. But then I heard Adriana's voice and she said, "You guys don't understand. It's gotten so much worse lately. He's become really controlling and he gets angry over everything." And I almost choked on my sandwich because what the hell is she talking about? I've never been controlling. I work all day and come home and try to stay out of everyone's way. Then Fiona goes, "That sounds like emotional abuse to me." And my heart just stopped because where the hell is this coming from? And Gina agrees and goes, "Yeah, that walking away thing he just did, that's manipulation." And I'm thinking, how is me going upstairs to shower manipulation? And then Adriana, my wife who I've been married to for 4 years, she goes, "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd married someone different, someone who actually wants to be part of life instead of just existing in it." And I had to put my sandwich down because I felt like I was going to throw up. Jane goes, "You deserve better than this." And Fiona says, "You need to think about whether this is the life you want." And Adriana just sighs and goes, "I know, I think about it all the time. He's just so negative and toxic. And I feel like I'm walking on eggshells all the time. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes just staring at the wall because I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and I'm trying to figure out when I became this terrible person she's describing. Because I go to work every day, and I pay the bills, and I don't cheat, and I don't drink too much, and I don't hit her, and I thought we were happy, or at least okay. Eventually, I heard them getting louder, and more wine must have been involved, because Fiona's voice was getting that slurred edge it gets when she's drunk, and she was saying things like, he probably monitors your phone, and does he control the money? And Adriana was going, well, he does handle all the finances, and I'm thinking, of course I handle the finances, because she asked me to, because she hates dealing with bills and budgets. Then Gina says something about classic signs of abuse, and Jane goes, you need to document everything. And I realized they were talking about me like I'm some kind of criminal. My wife is just sitting there letting them paint me as this abusive monster when all I did was come home tired from work and want a shower. I couldn't take it anymore, so I put on my headphones and tried to watch TV. But I kept thinking about what Adriana said about wishing she'd married someone different and wondering how long she's felt this way and whether our whole marriage has been a lie. They finally left around 11 p.m. and Adriana came upstairs and acted like nothing happened and asked if I was okay, and I said I was fine because I didn't know what else to say and I needed time to process what I'd heard. But I've been lying here thinking about it, and I can't shake the feeling that I'm being set up for something and that my wife has been talking about me behind my back for who knows how long and painting me as this terrible person to justify whatever she's planning to do. Am I the asshole for going to my room instead of hanging out with her friends? Some people are asking about our relationship history. We've been together for 6 years, married for 4. Adriana works part-time at a boutique, and I work construction full-time. We bought our house 2 years ago, and I thought things were good between us. I guess I was wrong. I don't even know where to begin, but I guess I should tell you what happened because it's insane, and I'm sitting in a hotel room right now, trying to figure out what the hell my life has become. So yesterday morning, I woke up and Adriana was already gone to work, and I figured maybe we could talk when she got home because I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd heard the night before, and I needed to understand what was going on with us. I went to work, but I couldn't concentrate, and my foreman Frank asked if I was okay because I was being sloppy and almost dropped a beam on my foot, and I told him I was having some problems at home, and he said to take the afternoon off and get my head straight. So I came home early around 2 p.m., and Adriana's car wasn't there, but I figured I'd wait for her and maybe clean up the house a bit and try to think about how to approach this whole thing without it turning into a fight. But when I walked in the house, I could hear voices in the living room, and I thought, maybe Adriana had come home for lunch by Uber and brought one of her friends. But when I looked around the corner, it was Fiona and Gina sitting at my kitchen table looking through papers, and they both jumped when they saw me. Fiona goes, oh, we didn't expect you home so early. And I'm standing there looking at these 2 women in my house without my wife, and I said, where's Adriana? And what are you doing here? And Gina gets this nervous look and goes, she gave us a key. We're just waiting for her. And I'm thinking, why the hell does my wife give keys to people without telling me? And I said, waiting for her for what? And Fiona gets that attitude again and goes, that's between us and Adriana. And I realized they had a bunch of papers spread out on my table, and I could see what looked like bank statements. And I said, are those my financial documents? Gina tries to cover them up and goes, we're just helping Adriana with some things. And I walked over and I could see they had my bank statements, my pay stubs, even documentation from when we bought the house. And I said, what the hell is this? And Fiona stands up and goes, yous need to calm down. But I wasn't going to calm down because these people were going through my private financial information and my house without my permission. And I said, get out, both of you, right now. And Gina goes, we're not leaving until Adriana gets here. And I said, yes, you are. This is my house, and you're going through my personal documents without permission. Fiona gets in my face and goes, this is exactly what we're talking about. You're being aggressive and controlling. And I said, I'm being aggressive? You're in my house going through my bank statements. And she goes, Adriana has every right to access this information. I said, Adriana has access to everything. She's on all the accounts, but you two don't. And Gina pipes up with, we're helping her understand her options. And that's when it clicked that they were helping her figure out finances for a divorce. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach, and I said, get out now, or I'm calling the police. And Fiona laughs and goes, go ahead, call them. They'll want to hear about how you're threatening us. And I said, I'm not threatening anyone. I'm telling you to leave my house. That's when Adriana walked in and saw us all standing there, and she got this panicked look. And Gina goes, he came home early, and started yelling at us, which was not what happened at all. And Adriana looks at me and goes, why are you being so hostile? I said, Adriana, why are your friends going through our financial documents? And she gets defensive and goes, I can share whatever I want with my friends. And I said, our bank statements and mortgage papers, without discussing it with me first? Fiona jumps in with, C. He's trying to control what you can and can't do. And I said, I'm not trying to control anything. I just want to understand why my private financial information is being shared with people who aren't part of this marriage. Adriana goes, because I needed help understanding our finances. And I said, you could have asked me. I would have explained anything you wanted to know. And she goes, right, like you explain anything. You just handle everything yourself and expect me to trust you. I'm standing there thinking, when did asking me about our finances become impossible? And I said, Adriana, you've never asked me about money that I didn't answer. And Fiona goes, that's what every controlling husband says. Gina starts gathering up the papers and goes, we should go, but Adriana tells them to stay. And I said, no, they should go. We need to talk about this privately. And Adriana goes, I don't want to be alone with you when you're you're like this. One of the cops came over and said, "Sir, you need to leave immediately." And I said, "This is my house. What's going on?" And he goes, "We have a complaint of domestic violence." I said, "Domestic violence? I haven't even seen my wife since yesterday afternoon, and I've got witnesses." And he looked skeptical and said, "She's got bruises on her arms," and she says, "You grabbed her and shook her." I felt like the world was spinning because this was impossible, and I said, "Officer, I was at the XYZ hotel last night. I can show you the receipt. I can show you the key card. I ordered room service. There's got to be cameras," but he just told me to back away from the scene. Another cop came over and said, "Are you the husband?" And when I said yes, he goes, "We need to place you under arrest." And I said, "For what?" And he goes, "Assault and battery." And that's when I really started panicking. I said, "I want to call my lawyer." And they said I could do that from the station, and they put me in handcuffs right there in front of all my neighbors, and I could see people taking pictures with their phones, and I felt like my whole life was being destroyed in real time. At the station, they put me in a holding cell and let me call my lawyer. And when I told him what happened, he said, "Don't say anything to anyone until I get there." And I said, "But I have an alibi. I wasn't even there." And he goes, "Just sit tight and don't talk." He showed up about 2 hours later, and we had a meeting with the detective. And my lawyer presented the hotel receipts and the keycard records and the room service receipt from 9 p.m. and asked them to check the hotel security cameras, and you could see the detective's face change when he realized I couldn't have been at my house when Adriana said the attack happened. The detective left the room and came back about 30 minutes later and said there seems to be some confusion about the timeline. And my lawyer said, "What kind of confusion?" And he goes, "The alleged victim may have been mistaken about when the incident occurred." My lawyer said, "Or the incident didn't occur at all." And the detective said they were going to need to do more investigation and released me, but said not to go home or contact my wife. I went back to the hotel, and I was sitting there trying to figure out what the hell just happened when my phone rang, and it was Fiona. And she was drunk, crying and saying, "I'm sorry, this wasn't supposed to happen like this." I said, "What wasn't supposed to happen like this?" And she goes, "Adriana wasn't supposed to call the cops. We were just trying to help her get ready for the divorce." And I said, "Get ready? How?" She's crying and slurring her words and goes, "We told her she needed to document everything, that she needed proof you were abusive." And I said, "Proof of what? I never touched her." And Fiona goes, "We know, but she needed something for the divorce." I couldn't believe what I was hearing, and I said, "Are you telling me she made up the bruises?" And Fiona starts sobbing and goes, "It was my idea." I said, "She should take pictures of some marks and say, 'You did it.'" But she wasn't supposed to actually call the police. I said, "What marks? What are you talking about?" And she goes, "She fell at work a few days ago and had bruises on her arms." And I said, "She should take pictures and say, 'You grabbed her.'" And I felt like I was going to be sick. I said, "Fiona, are you saying my wife has been planning to frame me for domestic violence?" And she goes, "Not frame you, just give her leverage in the divorce." And I said, "That's the same thing." She kept crying and saying she was sorry and that Adriana was supposed to just threaten to show the pictures to get a better settlement. But then her sister told her she should call the police to make it official, and everything got out of hand. I hung up and called my lawyer immediately and told him about the conversation, and he said, "Please tell me you recorded that." And I said, "No, but I can try to get her to say it again." And he goes, "Do not contact her, but if she contacts you again, record everything." About an hour later, Fiona called back, and this time I was ready, and I recorded the whole thing, and she basically repeated everything she'd said before about how they plan to use fake domestic violence allegations to help Adriana in the divorce, and how it wasn't supposed to involve the police. My lawyer said this was huge, and that we needed to get this information to the police immediately, because filing a false police report is a felony, and so is filing false domestic violence charges. This morning we went to the police station and played the recording for the detective. The detective said they were going to arrest both Adriana and Fiona, and that all charges against me would be dropped and expunged, and that they might also charge Gina if they could prove she was part of the conspiracy. I asked what happens now, and he said Adriana would probably be charged with filing a false police report and possibly perjury if she lied in her official statement, and that I should contact a civil attorney about suing for defamation and false imprisonment. My divorce lawyer said this changes everything, because now we can prove she was acting in bad faith and trying to defraud me, and that she'll probably get nothing in the divorce and might even owe me money for damages. I keep thinking about how close I came to being arrested for something I didn't do, and how my wife, the person I trusted more than anyone in the world, was willing to destroy my life and my reputation just to get more money in a divorce. The craziest part is that if Fiona hadn't gotten drunk and called me feeling guilty, I might be sitting in jail right now facing years in prison for domestic violence I never committed, and Adriana would be playing the victim and probably getting sympathy from everyone while I lost everything. I don't know how someone can be married to a person for 4 years and not know they're capable of something like this, but I guess that's what I get for trusting someone who was apparently planning to betray me the whole time. The divorce papers are being filed tomorrow, and my lawyer says we're going to go after her for everything we can get, and I don't feel bad about that at all because she tried to ruin my life over money. I still can't believe this is real. I know most of you probably forgot about this whole mess by now, but I figured I should close the loop on everything that happened because a lot of people were asking for updates, and the divorce finally went through last week. So after everything went down with the arrest and the false charges, Adriana ended up pleading guilty to filing a false police report and got 6 months probation and community service and had to pay a fine. And Fiona got the same thing, plus she had to pay restitution for my legal fees, which was nice because those bills were getting pretty steep. Gina didn't get charged with anything because they couldn't prove she knew about the fake bruise plan, but honestly, I think she was probably in on it too, based on how she was acting that day. They were all going through my financial documents. The divorce took forever because Adriana kept trying to drag it out and claim she was the victim of abuse, even after she'd been convicted of lying about it. But my lawyer shut that down pretty fast every time she tried to bring it up, and eventually her lawyer told her to stop because it was just making her look worse. She ended up getting basically nothing except her car and her personal stuff, and she had to split the lawyer fees with me, even though mine were way higher because of all the criminal stuff, and she had to sign a paper saying she would never claim I abused her or contact me again. I got the house, and most of our savings in my retirement account stayed mine, and I didn't have to pay any alimony because of the false charges thing, which my lawyer said was pretty rare, but the judge was really pissed off about the whole situation. The weirdest part was that Adriana's sister came to talk to me a few weeks before the divorce was final and apologized and said she had no idea what Adriana was planning and that she only told her to call the police because she believed Adriana's story about me hitting her. She said Adriana had been complaining about our marriage for months and making me sound like this terrible controlling husband, and that she and Adriana's mom had been encouraging her to leave me, but they never thought she would make up abuse allegations. I asked her when Adriana started talking about our marriage being bad, and she said it started right after we bought the house, and Adriana realized how much money I was making and how much our assets were worth, and that's when she started saying I was controlling and didn't let her have access to money, which was complete bullshit because Adriana knew exactly how much money we had and where it all was, and she had her own cards and accounts, but I guess she thought she could get more if she played the victim. Her sister said Adriana's been living with their mom since everything happened and working at some retail job making barely anything, and that she's been telling people I ruined her life and got her arrested for no reason. I said she got herself arrested by filing false charges against me, and her sister nodded and said, I know, but Adriana doesn't see it that way. She still thinks she was justified because you were emotionally abusive. I asked what emotional abuse she was talking about, and her sister said working too much, not wanting to socialize, handling the finances, all the stuff her friends convinced her was abuse, and I realized Adriana probably still believes she was the victim in all this. It's crazy how someone can convince themselves that their own bad decisions are someone else's fault, but I guess that's what Adriana needs to believe to live with herself. I'm doing fine now. Work is good. I got a little bump in my salary last month, and I'm making even more money now, which is ironic because Adriana could have had half of everything if she just asked for a divorce instead of trying to destroy my life first. My brother and my parents never believed for 1 second that I was abusive, and my coworkers all thought the charges were ridiculous. And my foreman even wrote a character reference letter for my lawyer saying I was one of the most level-headed guys he'd ever worked with. I still get angry sometimes when I think about how close I came to losing everything, and maybe even going to prison for something I didn't do, but mostly I just feel relieved that it's over and that found out who Adriana really was before we had kids or anything. I never did figure out exactly when Adriana decided she wanted out of our marriage or when she started planning the whole fake abuse thing, but it doesn't matter anymore because she's not my problem and never will be again. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had just stayed downstairs and hung out with her friends that night instead of going to my room, but then I realized she was probably already planning to leave me anyway and would have found some other excuse. People who are willing to lie to police and fake domestic violence charges aren't good people no matter how you slice it, and I'm better off without that kind of person in my life, even if it took me 4 years to figure out who she really was. Anyway, thanks again to everyone who helped me through this mess and told me I wasn't crazy and that what was happening to me wasn't normal, because without this community I probably would have just accepted that I was the problem and let Adriana destroy my life. You guys literally saved me from prison and poverty, and I can't thank you enough for that. Edit. Stop asking me for Adriana's social media or trying to find her online. I'm not giving out personal information, and I don't want anyone harassing her even though she deserves. Just let her live her shitty life with her mom and leave it at that.